Do you want to learn how to flip items to make huge amounts of silver? If that's the case, this is the right video for you. Now, flipping is one of the most profitable ways to make money in Albion Online, and I'm going to show you exactly all the different kinds of flips that you can do. So, what exactly is a flip? Well, flipping means buying something cheap and selling it for a higher value. Now, the concept itself is fairly simple, but a lot of people struggle to execute it properly. So, before we do anything, it's vital that we understand what types of flips we will be doing. Now, these fall into 4 major categories: items, vanity, real estate, and transporting. Now, we're going to start with the most basic one, which is items. Now, in order to flip any item well, the first thing that you're going to be needing is to master the art of crafting. And why is that? Because you have to know how much every single item in the game costs. Now, of course, you won't be memorizing every item in the game and their respective value, but what you can do is understand how much each item costs you to make. And then you can roughly highball how much you can pay without ever being scammed. Now, one flip I did a while back was an 8.4 nature staff. Now, the first thing that I did was check the seller's name. If the seller has a very low fame account, and by this I mean less than 1 million fame, it's very likely that's a scammer. So when you're dealing with these people, you have to be very cautious. But since he seemed safe, I could jump into stage 2, which is figuring out how much the nature staff is worth. Now, at the moment, in Europe server, you can buy 8.4 materials for around 3 million silver. And by inspecting the item, you can very quickly tell that it's a one-handed item, meaning that it has a total of 24 materials. In this case, 16 planks and 8 cloths. Now, this means that the total value of the item would be 3 million multiplied by 24. Totaling 72 million. This, of course, without any return rate considered. Now, all of these items that are super high tier are often crafted in hideouts with focus and very high return rates, usually more than 50%. But to make the math easier, we're just gonna round and count that it's 50% the return rate, which means that the true value of the item would be 72 million times 50%, which is the return rate, meaning that the item would cost around 36 million silver to make. Now, this is the bottom price at which the item could be produced, and therefore anything below this number means it's a very good deal. Now, with this in mind, I knew the guy was asking 30 million for the item, so it was a very good deal for me to flip. With this in mind, there were only 2 options for me to sell this nature staff. It was either in the royal cities or the black market. Now, the experience that a seller has is a very important indicator of a good flip, because some items sell extremely well in some cities and very poorly in the black market, and vice versa, meaning that some items sell really good in the black market but very bad in the cities. Now, I knew right away that the nature staff of this category would be a really bad item for me to sell in any market other than the black market. So what I did was simply get naked, travel to Carlion, and with a physical copy of the item, in this case a tier 4, manually check how much the black market was paying me for the nature staff. In this case, it was 38 million silver, so I knew straight away it was a great deal. And with that in mind, I messaged the seller. Now, I tried to lowball the offer a little bit more, because the more the merrier, and I ended up buying the staff for 29.5 million silver. Now, transporting to Carlion is always a bit risky and something I wouldn't recommend for a new player, since one bad death is enough to make you want to literally uninstall the game. So, I would not recommend that you choose to do that, but if you do it at your own risk. Now, often you'll find items like blazings, satchels, and bags, and many others that can be sold in royal cities for a quick profit margin. Mostly, you're going to be looking for PvE items, PvP items that sell extremely well in cities, because players need these items for the contents that they do. But certain items, especially non-artifacts, sell very good in the black market because most players don't use them for their day-to-day game. Now, if you're interested in a complete guide on what sells better on each city and on the black market, you can check this guide right here that I made a few months ago. Now, when I'm doing flips, a lot of people ask me how much profit I look for. The reality is that it's a very personal subject and it depends from person to person. Currently, my net worth is a little bit north of 13 billion silver, which means I have a lot of money, and I'm not saying this in a flexing way. But let's imagine that I invested all these 13 billion into something that would sell over the course of a month, and it got me 10% profit margin. Now 10% does not sound like a lot because it really isn't. But if it's 10% of 13 billion, that would be 1.3 billion silver in a month, which is honestly a whole lot of money. If you did the same thing, but instead of investing 13 billion, you invested 10 million and you'd gotten the same 10%, you would only get 1 million silver, which is honestly not that good. So basically, what is the moral of the story? The more money you have, the lower the profit margin you can go for, because you can hold on to investments longer and you can pay them off better. Now, rule of thumb, for someone who doesn't want to invest that much, you want to aim for around 20 to 30% profit margin, because this gives you enough margin to relist the item if needed. Now, relisting can be done in two situations only. First, if someone outlists you and your items get buried. And by get buried, I mean you won't be able to sell yours within the 30 days of the items going to the marketplace. And finally, the second one is if your items ever expired by the listing, meaning that 30 days have gone by and you have to relist the items again. Now, this is the golden rule that I follow for all my flips and make sure that they are profitable. Now, the second flip that we're going to be doing is the vanity flip, which is usually done over long term. Now, how exactly does this work? Well, vanity items usually follow a rotational system. Some are yearly, some are tri-yearly, and some are never to be released again. Now, items such as the referral skins are a great example of flips. Now, when they come out, every 2 or 3 years, they cost around 30 million silver. But over the span of a few months, their value tends to skyrocket. And why is that? Because they will only be relaunched after a few years later, usually 2 to 3, meaning that anyone who wants to buy the skin, let's say a year and a half later, will either have to wait for it to be relaunched again or pay an additional amount to a collector or a reseller who holds onto it. A great example of this is the Summer Fawn, which I bought a few months ago for around 30 million silver. But since then, the value has increased up to 120 million, so it's pretty much a 4x return in about 3 months of investment, which is really, really good. Now, there are also items whose tendency is simply to go up in value. Items such as the recruiters or the founder pack editions, because they will never be released again. Now, the Pegasus is a great example that started on Europe launch for around 5 million and now it's going for north of 300 million. So you can imagine how much profit some players made by just holding on to them for a year. Now imagine how much they will earn if they hold on to it for 5 or 10. Now, this method is mostly used by players who already have quite a little bit of money and they can hold on to some equity, standing still and appreciating over time. But again, patience is a virtue with this one, so you have to be prepared to hold on to as much as you can before you sell these items. And then we have the real estate, which is by far one of the most unknown flips that players don't know about. But it's by far one of the most profitable ones, especially if you're lucky. Now, every single month, player-owned shops go into a closed auction system, and the highest bidder keeps the shop. Now, since it's the closed auction, you don't know what the other players bid, or if there's any bidders at all. And this is where the essence of this flip lies, the lack of bidders. Now, what is the secret here? It's placing on multiple low bids and hoping that the shop owner or other owners don't bid. Now, often you can find these shops being sold for as little as 2 million silver. And if you acquire a shop like this, you have two options. You either play the shop game for the entire cycle and you see how much money you can get, or you can take the easy way out and sell it quickly, either to the original owner or to someone else by placing a sell order on the shop, which is a little sign that's on top of your station. Now this can be only done once a month during the shop auction week, so you have to pay very close attention so you don't miss out on this timing. Now what I recommend is also saving up as much as you can during that week so you can place as many bids as you can during the auction on Sunday, which is the last day until it gets auctioned off. And finally, the last flip, which is by far the most common one, is a transporting flip. And this is basically taking out items from where they are produced to where they are needed, of course involving transporting. So a great example of this is Martlock. It's the city where the hide refining bonus exists. But the thing is, there are no hide resources in its biome, and therefore all the hides need to be transported from other cities, especially Bridgewatch, which is the city where there's the most hide biome. So you can earn quite a little bit of silver by simply taking hides all the way from Bridgewatch to Martlock. Now you can also do this with other products, especially refined ones like the leather. Now in Martlock, there is not that much demand for leather. But in Limers, for example, there's a huge demand because there's two bonuses that use it, such as hoods and shoes. And since there's going to be a higher demand for these materials, the tendency is that they are more expensive in that city as well. And finally, you have the refined goods and products. For example, these same shoes and hoods, which can be sold for a higher profit in other cities than Limers due to supply and demand. Because again, if there's a higher supply of these shoes because it's the bonus city and the demand is the same, the price is going to be lower. So a lot of the times you can make a lot of money by simply taking them to other cities. Again, this either by transporting through an ox, for example, or by just fast traveling on the travel planner. But again, this will have fees and you have to make sure that you're making profit. So this sums up pretty much all the flips that you can do on Albion. Some take more money than others, but some are easier for you to do if you're a newer player. The most important thing is that you try out and see what works best for you, as there is not only one way to make money in this game. Now, whether it's through Sate Chat, random discords, or just the Albion market, there is absolutely no way for you to not make money. Now, if you have any questions regarding this, you can also check out my Discord link down below where we host active premium giveaways and it's a little crafting community where you can put your questions. Anyways, that is all for me. Thank you so much for watching this video and I hope I'll see you on the next one. And as usual, Nendys out.